Hello everybody, welcome back to a brand new video. Today, I know this is a random ass video to do, but I'm different from a lot of people who do political videos, as you can tell. Because I like to consider myself a progressive, but not the far left progressive. I like to call my ideology either centrist progressivism or populist unity. Either one's fine, it don't bother me any. But anyway, there's a quote I like to talk about that was from Theodore Roosevelt. And that is, a great democracy must be progressive or it will soon cease to be a great democracy, which to me is 100% correct. We need to be progressive and move on into a new age of a new age of America, and not one that is too far right or one that is too far left. Something that appeals to not just white people, but blacks, women. They're not race, but men, women, blacks, whites, and the poor, the rich, everybody. It needs to appeal to everybody, something that where everyone will benefit, not just one specific group of people. And, well, that's what I'm going to talk about. So here's some ideologies that I have when it comes to things like adoption. I believe that anyone, despite what sexuality or religion they are, they could be a gay Christian. I think they should be able to adopt, because children are not going to care who adopts them. They will be happy enough just to have a parent. These orphans have years without parents, and they would just be thrilled just to have one. Whether it is two dads, two moms, or a mom and a dad, it should not matter. But we should not get involved on who adopts a child unless there are signs of neglect and abuse from either the parent or the child. If the child seems like it's getting abused or neglected, that is when the government should step in. Now let's talk about abortion. I believe there should be no exception for an abortion to happen, even if it's a threat to the mother's life, rape, or incest. The child should not have to suffer for that. And guess what? There is something even... Now you might be asking, what about the threat to the mother's life? Well, guess what? There's a thing called a C-section. It's going to hurt like hell, but you are not going to die from it. But that child will still live, okay? That is just what I believe. I know the C-section is going to hurt like hell, but that is just something that just needs to happen. And you can recover from a C-section. The baby cannot recover from being dead. Planned Parenthood, the government should not fund any organization that lets abortions performed there. That's just what I believe. Gender identity. I feel as if somebody wanted to be identified as opposite sex, then that's fine. As long as they're not putting it in other people's face for no reason, other than to say that they are trans. Now, if it is passed through Congress that people who identify as transgender will be added to the anti-discrimination laws, then I would not veto the bill. I'd actually just be like, okay, sure, why not? It doesn't bother me any. If they want to identify as, let's say I'm a man, I identify as a woman, and that's fine. And if I start throwing it in your face, that's not right. Nobody cares. The Religious Freedom Act. The business owners should not be allowed to deny services to customers with different beliefs to them. American businesses is our economy, and with owners denying consumers, that is hurting our economy, whether you believe it or not. Marital rape. Marital rape should 100% be classified and punished the same as non-marital rape or statutory rape. It's the same thing. I honestly believe that it's wrong, it's disgusting, it's inhuman. The gun laws. Every American has a right to bear arms, including pistols, rifles, shotguns, etc. It is part of our Second Amendment, and it should always stay that way. But when buying a gun, I do think that a background is needed for someone to legally purchase a gun. Also, teachers should definitely be allowed to carry guns at school. Once again, background checks would be needed for this, just to make sure that these people aren't crazy. Transgender athletes. If transgenders are born with both parts, they should be allowed to compete in sports of a gender they choose. If they identify as a woman, they will compete in women's sports. If they identify as a man, they would participate in men's sports. But if they are females who are born that way, but they identify as male, and they haven't had a transition yet, a female who identifies as a male, but is still a woman, they would compete in female athletes, and it would be the same vice versa. The death penalty. I think the death penalty should be removed, as it is an easy way out for a lot of criminals. Instead, replace it with life in solitary confinement or a padded room. That is a fate worse than death. People will go crazy. No outside interaction, no windows, no light. You get fed 2 or 3 times a day, maybe 4 times if they're lucky. They will wish for death, but they're not going to get it. Women in combat, women should absolutely be in combat. It'll make our military forces both more stronger and united. It'll hopefully make women of younger generations more inspired to help our country in case of an attack. So women should definitely not be put down, I think. Women is going to be the future of our country, whether or not they want to act like spoiled brats at this point in time or not. Safe spaces. I honestly believe all schools, not just college and universities, should have safe spaces for kids who suffer through mental health problems, and a requirement to give all students a maximum of 3 excused mental days off per 9 weeks, or 6 per semester. Note, these do not count as excused sick days, days where they were at the doctor, etc. When they return, they will have to go to the counselor within the first hour of school starting. That would be mandatory. So just to make sure that they're not slacking off and just use it just to go do drugs or something. Also, all work should be excused on this day, only if it was assigned that day and if the assignment is due that day or the following day, because they had no idea. That should not be held against them. That's only adding more stress to them. Drug laws. I support decriminalizing all drugs and start immediate funding for drug rehabilitation centers all across America for an attempt to rehabilitate addicts. Though marijuana should be illegal at a federal level, cigarettes and tobacco products should be illegal at a federal level. I say this because cigarettes and tobacco do more damage than marijuana. Marijuana does a lot less damage than cigarettes and tobacco. There are a lot less deaths. I don't even think anyone has died through a marijuana overdose, but people have died through cigarettes, tobacco. I don't want to say overdose, but symptoms caused by tobacco products such as lung cancer, mouth cancer, throat cancer, etc. Term limits for politicians. I believe the 22nd Amendment, the president is only allowed to 2 terms in office, should be abolished. I believe if you're not going to set term limits for Congress and the Senate, the president shouldn't have to either. Now, or we can just change this to where they are only allowed to serve 3 terms in office, since that is where I believe that 3rd term would have made a lot of politicians get more stuff done, considering the fact that the Senate usually changes power once every 12 to 16 years. Flag burning. It should be illegal federally to burn the American flag, and that should be 7 years to 10 years in prison for that. That is not right. You live in this country. Why burn the summer gun? Global climate issues. A new cabinet position should be created called the Department of Global Change, and they should micromanage the situation of the global climate. I will be the first to admit I am super inexperienced when it comes to the global climate issue. So I would appoint somebody who would keep me up to date, inform me about all this, and would tell me what's going to happen, what would happen, this and that. Taxes. Taxes should not have to be raised for any circumstance, not even on the rich, as they pay more in taxes anyway. See, the more money you make and the more money you spend, the more in taxes you have to pay. That is how it works. That's literally how it works. If you make minimum wage, you have to pay less in taxes than someone who makes $12.50 an hour. That's just what I'm saying. Worker wages. The minimum wage should be lowered to $4.75 an hour, and then a maximum wage should be passed in a law which sets the maximum wage up to $20 an hour. This allows more businesses to allow more jobs. Now you might be asking, well, if you lower the minimum wage, prices are still going to be the same. Not if you open a department where you can regulate prices where they should be. Nobody wants to pay $3 for a jug of milk. I think a jug of milk should be either a dollar or 90 cents, because you're making $4.75 an hour. Prices need to be lowered extremely. Now you might be saying this will kill businesses. No, it will not. The lower the prices is, the more of a product you are getting. The higher lower the price, higher the demand. Now that's probably not what you learn in school, but that's the truth. I guarantee it. Worker rights. Women who are on a maternity leave should absolutely get a paid leave. Their pay should be a 20-hour per week paycheck every week they're on that mandatory leave. Children 13 to 15 should be allowed to work if they have a worker's permit. And, work in places where they allow this. I'm not going to set mandatory laws that say everywhere this should be allowed, but if the establishment allows it, then they can work there. But American citizens 16 and up should work with that one and anywhere. So if you're 16, you do not need a worker's permit. That's just what I believe. The universal basic income. I do support a universal basic income, but not of $1,000 a month, but $750 a month for every American over 18 and who has a job and makes less than $10 an hour. This will help them, help pay their bills, etc. People who are 65 or older and are retired should also receive a UBI, but of $2,000 a month. I have 2 grandparents who are who don't get enough off of their Social Security or their retirement funds and are barely living off as it is. They barely have enough to pay off their house, and barely enough to get food. But in cost of all this, Social Security should be cut altogether. It's not working. Social Security is not working for anyone, really. I don't believe it is, and I think this UBI would do a lot more for people. Immigration. If children of illegal immigrants are born within the United States, they should be classified as American citizens since they are born on American soil. Until the U.S. Until the U.S. can improve screening out potential terrorists, Muslims should be banned from entering the country. Now, this is not a permanent ban; this is temporary. This should only last 10 to 15 years. That should be enough time for us to improve screening on potential terrorists. Though, if any immigrant commits a serious crime within U.S. borders, they will immediately be sent to their home country. All immigrants should be forced to study for and pass 80% or higher on a citizenship test. Now, if it sounds like I'm very boring, I'm sorry. I just woke up. I'm very tired. I'm usually much more energetic than this, I promise. Price regulations. The Department of Price Administration should become a cabinet position. They will ensure in regulation prices for food, housing, medicine, etc. See, I talked about this a little bit. There should be a department for this, and of course, I would meet with all my cabinet members once a day, and we would meet for 30 minutes to an hour every single day. The youth of America. A new department should be created for the youth of America, dealing with the abuse of children, children suffering from mental health disorders, and etc. This was proposed by Marianne Williamson, the Department of Youth. I think it's a great idea. Her other cabinet position, the Department of Peace and Freedom, I think is what it's called. I don't think that's as good as idea, but still. Health insurance. Medicaid and Medicare should be expanded upon and free for all Americans, including letting them also have a private insurance at the same time, depending on if the insurer allows it. What do I mean by this? I think Medicaid allows you to get has dental, dental wear for things, but they do not let you get things like crowns and stuff. I think all dental issues should be free with this. Glasses wear should all be free, stuff like that. Voting issues. A photo ID should be required for all Americans wanting to vote. I also support the idea of Andrew Yang's democracy dollars. Here's a quote from his website, yang2020.com. The easiest way to do this is to provide Americans with publicly funded vouchers that they can use to donate to politicians that they support. Every American gets $100 a year to give to the candidates. Use it or lose it, these democracy dollars would, by the sheer volume of the U.S. population, drown out the influence of mega donors. That is 100% true and should be instituted into law. Space exploration. This is short and sweet. The government should fund space travel. The space race, to me, has not ended. People are still trying to get to other planets, and I think America should be the first one to get to each planet first. Policies and police and prisons, my bad. Officers will mandatorily wear body cameras, and if they refuse to or don't wear it at all, they will be relieved of their duties and will never serve as an officer again. This will help prevent police, abusing their power, police abusing either criminals or innocent men and women who didn't do anything wrong. It'll hopefully stop the abuse on black men and women. It's not right, I don't feel like. And criminals charged with drug possession of any kind should be pardoned and released from jail and or prison to help prevent overcrowding in the prisons. Now, I did this for fun. Let's pretend I'm president and choosing a cabinet for fun. Now, you can see that I have a very diverse cabinet when it comes to parties. I think that everybody should be a part of this. I believe in political unity, not party unity, political unity. We need to be united as a country. We shouldn't be fighting over certain things. We need to be at least agreeing on a lot of things to help make this country go forward and not staying still because you believe in one thing and I believe in the next. We need to make a compromise. My vice president, I would choose Joe Kennedy III. I'm Republican, he's Democrat. This would be my first step into making political unity. Secretary of State Don Jr. This man has met with certain foreign leaders, and I don't know who he's met with, but I do know he's met with them. Pretty sure he's met with Putin a couple times. He's the son of the current president. I think he would do well as my Secretary of State. Secretary of Treasury. This man was part of the Board and Budget Committee in New Hampshire. He's also a former state congressman. He's also a libertarian from the state of New Hampshire. That's why I choose him as my Secretary of Treasury. Secretary of Defense, the Mark A. Milley. He's the current general of the Army. He is not affiliated with any sort of party, but he is from the state of Massachusetts. My Attorney General would be former Senator from North Carolina, John Edwards. He's currently an attorney right now. He's much experience dealing with law, and I think he would be the best bet to be my Attorney General. The Secretary of Interior would be Lieutenant Governor from Iowa, Adam Gregg. Secretary of Agriculture, Congressman from Georgia, Rick Allen. Secretary of Commerce, Andrew Yang from New York. Nobody knows more about this country's problems than this man. This man pays more attention, I believe, than anyone else. He is the best bet to be Secretary of Commerce of any administration. Third, Secretary of Labor, Virgil Goode, congressman or former congressman from Virginia. This man, I believe, would fight hard for labor unions and all that. I don't think anyone else could do a better job than this man. Secretary of Health and Human Services, Stephen T. Parent. He is part of the line of succession for Secretary of Health and Human Services. He's also an assistant secretary, and I feel like he would be next in line to become Secretary of Health and Human Services, so I would choose him. Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, the son of George W. Bush, George P. Bush. He is the Land Commissioner of Texas, so he knows a thing or two about the housing and urban development of certain areas. Secretary of Transportation, Dario Hunter from New Jersey. Secretary of Energy, Jill Stein. She is an activist from the state of Massachusetts. She's also part of the Green Party. Secretary of Education, I would choose Pete Budaj. He seems to be very adamant about changing education line for a lot of people, and I would choose him as my Secretary of Education. Now, if it turns out that he didn't care, I would replace him instantly with somebody who did. This one's just a bias pick. Secretary of Veteran Affairs, Radical Politics. He seems to know a lot about what's going on with veterans and stuff, so I would choose him. Next, as the Secretary of Homeland Security, I would pick Dan Crenshaw. He was the Lieutenant Commander of the Navy, or a Lieutenant Commander from the Navy, so I would choose him. Even though he is a gun grabber, again, we must find Congress. I would choose people that who don't really agree with me on certain things, so we can find a compromise. Secretary of Global Change, this is something I made up, as I've talked about before. This man, Jay Inslee, Governor of Washington, this man talks about this like he is very passionate about global climate and all that. I would choose him, see if he really knows what he's talking about. If he does it, I would kick him like with Pete Buttigieg. Next up is Secretary of Price Administration, Evan Mullen. I think he was the Director of Operations from the CIA. He's the independent from Utah. I think this man knows a thing or two about the whole price thing, so that's why I would choose him. Next up is Secretary of Youth. I would choose the woman who proposed to this. She cares a lot about America's youth, and I think honestly, I can't think of anyone better than Marianne Williamson to be the Secretary of Youth. So anyway, guys, this is my video. If you want me to do more of this, explaining everything, I can, but this is the Caddick one saying peace.